Hello there, everybody, and today for the Superman marathon with Superman, which has already come out, I might as well talk about Superman Returns. So I feel like I've always wanted to talk about Superman Returns, but I guess today's finally the day. Perfect timing. But this movie came out in 2006, so it's been years since we last saw a Superman movie, live action. All the way back from the failure that unfortunately was Superman 4 and Superman 3. And they tried to do a Supergirl movie, but eventually the Superman movies just weren't a thing anymore. But all the way in 2006, we finally saw the Man of Steel return. This time played by Brandon Routh. So Brandon Routh as Superman, he's actually a pretty solid Superman. It's unfortunate that he didn't get to continue playing the role after this movie, but he did return in the Arrowverse when he played Superman again in Crisis on Infinite Earths, so he got to have his little redemption as Superman, where he played like a much older Superman. I think it was like the Kingdom Come Superman. But in this movie, I think it's part of the Christopher Reeve universe. But I think it's mainly just ignoring 3 and 4 and kind of just following the events of what Richard Donner left off after Superman 2. But apparently, Superman has left Metropolis and went on the search for whatever happened on Krypton. He wanted to find the scattered remains of it, see if there's any life left. But apparently, because of this, he was gone for a very long time. But now he's back. And he's here to be Superman. But things have changed for Superman as Lois Lane, played by Kate Blanchett, I think her name is. She plays Lois Lane in this. And she has moved on in her life. She is married to James Marsden. By the way, this is when X-Men The Last Stand came out, so I guess James Marsden was busy. So that's the reason why he couldn't show up in X-Men 3. But I guess he got a role in this movie. And it's also directed by Bryan Singer, who directed the X-Men movies. So I guess he was constantly switching over for Superman and X-Men, which is ironic. But apparently, they also have a son. I think his name is Jordan. He's a little boy who turns out to actually have Superman powers, which is later in the movie. But apparently, when Superman does crash land on the planet, Martha finds him, and Superman decides to take it low on Smallville until he decides to go back to Metropolis and finally get his Daily Planet job back. And he even meets up with Jimmy Olsen, who's happy to see him, of course. But it all take a turn when Superman sees an article written by Lois that says, "The world doesn't need Superman." And it's actually, it really affects Superman because he feels he has abandoned his people of Earth. But it all takes a turn when a plane is about to crash that Lois is actually on. And Superman is actually able to finally don the costume. And might as well talk about the costume. It looks alright. Nothing spectacular. It looks like it's trying to be like a modern edge to it, or a mix of the Christopher Reeve costume. I don't know, it just looks kind of a little too cosplay if I really think about it. But Superman does save Lois in the plane, and he ends up stopping it at a baseball field. But Lois, of course, passes out from the experience. But apparently she wants to meet up with Superman for an interview. But apparently during all this, we also see Lex Luthor, who has come back. This time he's played by Kevin Spacey. So I know Kevin Spacey's not really well liked anymore. But I might as well talk about his Lex Luthor. I think it's perfect casting. He definitely looks like Lex Luthor without the hair. But I felt he could have done a lot more in this movie, since it was Lex Luthor who was chosen to be in this movie, of course. But apparently he has an evil scheme that, of course, is going to involve Superman's home planet that crashed onto the Earth, and that's what leads to the finale of the movie. But I'll get more into that later. But things do take a turn when Clark does meet up with Lois on the rooftop, and apparently Lois smokes, surprisingly. And I wasn't expecting that when I saw this as a kid, but apparently before Lois can go back down to meet up with her husband, apparently she wants to do an interview with Superman, and she's wanting to know why he left. But apparently he said he has his reasons. But this is where we get this infamous scene. Probably my favorite scene in the whole movie is where Superman decides to take Lois onto a flight. And we get this awkward exchange. Earlier in the movie, Lois did have a almost argument with Clark after he has returned, saying she feels disappointed that Superman has left and never explained why. But once they do go on to the flying scene, we get this infamous scene where she takes her shoes off, and Superman ends up taking her all the way around the planet. But apparently Superman tells her that he can hear voices, he can hear the cries of people who need his help, and he's trying to show her why the world does need Superman. But once Superman drops Lois off, he says goodbye to her and says, "I'm always around." I thought that line was pretty good. But apparently Lois decides she has a change of heart. She's going to find a way to investigate Lex Luthor by discovering that he has a yacht, which just becomes relevant later in the movie, where Lois decides to take her son to the yacht to sneak in and find out what Luthor is up to. But apparently, I even like the line where Jordan asks, are we breaking and entering? And she's like, no, this is... And then she's like, yes. But once Lois does get on board, she gets captured, of course, with Jordan. Apparently, Lex has a plan. He apparently has discovered earlier in the movie where he did go to the Fortress of Solitude. Apparently, he's going to use the giant, platform of Krypton and use it to destroy, I think, a certain area of the world so he can take all the money for himself. It's a hard plan to explain, but apparently this is his plan, and apparently he has found a green kryptonite which he's going to use on Superman. But while he's monologuing this plan, apparently James Marsden does notice Lois has gone missing, and so he decides to go look out for her for himself, but he takes a helicopter, but Superman finds this out, of course, and he's going to actually rescue Lois, but Lois is taken into a submarine once Jordan is discovered to have his powers. He has heat vision, a little bit of it, and he can fly just a little, but the two are taken into the submarine, and of course the place is going to start flooding, but of course Lex escapes with his henchmen, and I think we see this one lady who has a poodle, who I don't think it's Miss Tessmacher, but I think it's a different maid. But apparently James Marsden does save Lois in the submarine, but of course he's trapped in there until Superman finally does show up, and he's able to rescue the three, but they all escape except for Superman, who decides to go confront Lex himself. And this is where we get this infamous scene where Lex says kryptonite in a weird way, but apparently he's able to take out Superman because of the kryptonite. He's able to actually stab Superman. It's actually a brutal scene, but once Lois actually notices that Superman is not coming back, she decides to turn around and rescue him during a giant thunderstorm. But Lex basically tries to drown Superman, and of course Superman ends up getting rescued by Lois, who's able to literally pick him up and take him onto the helicopter. But they turn around and try to escape. But when Superman does wake up from his wound, who ends up getting, I think the kryptonite comes out of him, but he's able to have a little bit of strength. He's able to lift the platform Lex was trying to use to destroy half the world. But apparently Superman's able to throw it into space. But at what cost? Superman's able to crash land onto the ground. And then the people actually decide to save Superman by taking him to the hospital. And they try to revive him. But of course, it doesn't work since, he's Superman. But we actually think Superman's dead. But Lois is able to come to Superman's bed and realize he's going to be okay. But I love the scene where the hospital does come back and Superman is able to escape and he gets his costume back on. And Lois finally decides to write an article called Why the World Needs Superman. But before she publishes it, she notices Superman has visited Jordan, and Superman has a final moment with Lois, and of course he flies into the sky, into the unknown. So that's Superman Returns. So I probably missed some things in this breakdown, but yeah, this movie is pretty good. I think it's underrated. Is it my favorite Superman movie? No. This movie is a bit slower than the other Superman movies. It's a more serious interpretation of the world of Superman. But I did feel the chemistry between Brandon Routh and Kate Blanchett. And the flying scene was really good. It's just I wish there was more opportunity with this Superman reboot. Because this came out about a year after the Batman Begins. So this is our Batman and Superman at the time. Christian Bale as Batman and Brandon Routh as Superman. But yeah, I'd probably give this movie probably just a 7 out of 10. Nothing amazing, but overall I think it's an underrated Superman movie. But it has some good action scenes. The plane scene was really good for Superman. That scene looked probably the best. But overall, this movie could have been a lot more. Apparently, they were going to do a sequel, but it got canceled because the movie didn't do too well. But we wouldn't get a Superman reboot for a long time until 2013 when Henry Cavill took on the mantle. But I'm going to talk about Man of Steel. Hopefully, I can find a way to rewatch it. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time.